Hail, friends! Well, there has been quite a bit of controversy of late about the new Amazon show, The Rings of Power. It seems that some are either sounding horns of war upon what they view as the total desecration of Tolkien's works, while others are having a more patient tone, giving the show a chance, allowing the creators of the show to sing us a tale of their compressed adaptation of what takes place actually over thousands of years in Tolkien's lore. Well, I, for one, will be continuing to give the show a chance to strike a chord or two on my Tolkien heartstrings. So far in the first two episodes, there have been moments that I am really impressed by, really inspired by, and some moments that do leave me concerned about where some of the themes may resolve. But there is one aspect of the show which I have hardly heard any discussion about, and it's actually the opening title sequence that has impressed me more than anything else in the show. And it's rather funny because some of the most critical comments that I have seen about the show are actually about the opening sequence. For example, if you read some of the comments from YouTube, which are under a video where somebody posted the title sequence from the show, it's pretty amazing. And I don't mean to embarrass anyone or single anyone out, but let's just go through some of these comments. Again, this is on the title sequence to the show, as you can see here, The Rings of Power, opening intro theme song that somebody thankfully posted. And if we scroll down through some of these comments, there's plenty of kind comments now, but just to give you an example of the view some folks are having about this, I wonder how many dislikes this has. Where's the diversity? Where's the diversity in the sand? Look at this one. I'm genuinely disappointed with this opening. Here's one of my favorites. $1 billion, and they give us an Etch-a-Sketch intro. Here's another one. This intro is the most generic thing in fantasy now. Sand creating shapes. In the Wheel of Time is threads at least... I think there's a comma missing here. In the Wheel of Time is threads. At least there, the theme song was great, and the intro kind of told a mini story. They are clearly trying to do the Game of Thrones style, but it's becoming a cliche. The intro of that other show told a mini story. Some of the people here get it. WTF is this? It's even worse. Title reveal was way better. Cheapest intro ever. What a terrible intro. I'll watch The Hobbit instead of this series. At least the acting is good. LOL. They couldn't think of anything better than flying dust. Here's one. Boycott this show and Amazon Prime over the intro. And this is a strong one, and I think we'll end here. What absolute trash. Doesn't hold attention. Doesn't tell a story. Doesn't stick in the memory. It's meaningless, thoughtless, effortless waste of human life and resources, and therefore a flawless testament to the show it precedes. Wow. Okay, those are obviously some pretty harsh comments, but things like it's meaningless, it's thoughtless, effortless. Wow, that's mind-boggling, especially when you see what we're going to explore here. And so, you see, to me, this just reveals the painful ignorance and discord in the minds of the spectators, the audience, the madding crowd, whatever term you prefer to describe the onlookers and commenters of this Rings of Power intro sequence. In my experience in the past few months, the people who have been the loudest critics are the same, or they tend to be the same people that I suspect if I asked them 3 questions about the Silmarillion, it would reveal to me that they have never even read the lore that they're complaining so hard about, that it has been desecrated. And there's like a hyper paranoia about, well, some people call it wokeness, but there's definitely like a default tone of mockery now that has taken this generation captive, sadly. And it will have ruined the show for many, what possibly could have been a great experience for some people. You know, many people now just refuse to give the show a chance at all, simply because they just know, Amazon could not possibly properly portray something as beautiful and beloved as Tolkien's works. It's just not possible that such a great thing could happen through such a gigantic company, corporation like this. And, I totally understand that mindset. I do. It's understandable to me because there indeed is a lot of agenda, one way or another, being pushed in the modern media. I mean, that's undeniable. And I think people of varying views would agree that all kinds of agenda is being pushed in the media. And it's caused a lot of people now to be constantly on alert and defensive against the attacks on traditional Western values and other things. But I totally get it. But what a loss if you take the default position that you can or you should judge a work of art before you even see it, no matter who's created it. That's a horrible position to take. It's to judge a matter before hearing it or seeing it. That's definitely not the way of wisdom, to judge something before you even heard it or know what it's about. People think they already know what it's about. So one thing we have learned with movies and TV is you simply cannot always judge them by the trailers. And people were judging this whole series by the trailers. That's where it all started, with the trailers. And we all know trailers can be intentionally misleading or just poorly edited. Now, because so much of what excretes from the entertainment world today is in fact garbage, I think we all tend to fall into the trap of knowing for sure that it will be garbage. But that's a sad state of affairs to let yourself be stuck in, I think. Now, I'm not even saying that the series is going to be great or not great. I can't say. I've only seen 2 episodes, and these are art is a subjective thing, right? So, and a lot of people are going to come to the show know nothing about the Lord of the Rings. So maybe this will be a great experience for those people, but not such a great experience for people who do know Tolkien. But that's up to them to judge. Personally, I'm not going to judge a 50-episode series on 2 episodes. All I'm saying is we should give the show at least a full season before we can sit in the ring of doom and pronounce judgment. Okay, my rant is over. I do want to get back to what I do want to say what is great so far, and what is greatest for me so far in this show is this title sequence. I believe the title sequence to be absolutely brilliant. What more could a Tolkien enthusiast ask for than this intro sequence? The creators of the show have portrayed the essence of the Ainulindalë, which is Tolkien's mythic story of the creation of the world. And they've done it in a very simple, yet very meaningful way. In fact, it's so simple and plain that to the average viewer, we saw what they say. They say, meh, how boring. All that money. And we get coffee beans dancing on a table. they're saying things like this. And this is also, to me, the brilliance of the title sequence on another level, because it's such a simple, foolish thing, like grains of sand dancing to music. Yet we see now it's revealing the heart of the viewer. It's almost like a magic ring that reveals the heart of the wearer when they put it on. I think it's beautiful. So we should briefly review the Ainulindalë. Many people are not familiar with it. Ainulindalë is Tolkien's creation myth. All right, the one God creates everything through music and through the angels, which are called the Valar. So again, this is Tolkien's creation myth. To see why this title sequence is seemingly cheap and simple, yet in reality profoundly complex and rich in meaning, let's listen to an excerpt from Tolkien's musical creation myth. And by the way, for folks who don't know the Silmarillion or the deeper lore, in this narration that you're going to hear, you'll hear the narrator say Ilúvatar, or some people pronounce it Ilúvatar, which is the name of the one god in Tolkien's mythology, sometimes called Eru. But here you will hear his name uttered as Ilúvatar. So that's God in Tolkien's world telling. You'll hear him telling the Valar, the angels, to make a music together in harmony to bring creation into existence.
Then Ilúvatar said to them, "Of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music. And since I have kindled you with a flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices, if he will. But I will sit and hearken, and be glad that through you great beauty has been wakened into song." Then the voices of the Ainur, like unto harps, and lutes, and pipes, and trumpets, and viols, and organs, and like unto countless choirs singing with words, began to fashion the theme of Ilúvatar to a great music. And a sound arose of endless interchanging melodies woven in harmony that passed beyond hearing into the depths and into the heights, and the places of the dwelling of Ilúvatar were filled to overflowing, and the music and the echo of the music went out into the void, and it was not void. Never since have the Ainur made any music like to this music, though it has been said that a greater still shall be made before Ilúvatar by the choirs of the Ainur and the children of Ilúvatar after the end of days. Then the themes of Ilúvatar shall be played aright, and take being in the moment of their utterance, for all shall then understand fully his intent in their part, and each shall know the comprehension of each. And Ilúvatar shall give to their thoughts the secret fire, being well pleased. But now Ilúvatar sat and hearkened, and for a great while it seemed good to him, for in the music there were no flaws. But as the theme progressed, it came into the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Ilúvatar. For he sought therein to increase the power and glory of the part assigned to himself. To Melkor, among the Ainur, had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. He had gone often alone into the void places seeking the imperishable flame, for desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Ilúvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient of its emptiness. Yet he found not the fire, for it is with Ilúvatar. But being alone, he had begun to conceive thoughts of his own unlike those of his brethren. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightway discord arose about him, and many that sang nigh him grew despondent, and their thought was disturbed, and their music faltered. But some began to attune their music to his rather than to the thought which they had at first. Then the discord of Melkor spread ever wider, and the melodies which had been heard before foundered in a sea of turbulent sound. But Iluvatar sat and hearkened until it seemed that about his throne there was a raging storm, as of dark waters that made war one upon another in an endless wrath that would not be assuaged. Then Iluvatar arose, and the Ainur perceived that he smiled. And he lifted up his left hand, and a new theme began amid the storm, like and yet unlike to the former theme, and it gathered power and had new beauty. But the discord of Melkor rose in uproar and contended with it, and again there was a war of sound more violent than before, until many of the Ainur were dismayed and sang no longer, and Melkor had the mastery. Then again Iluvatar arose, and the Ainur perceived that his countenance was stern, and he lifted up his right hand, and behold, a third theme grew amid the confusion, and it was unlike the others. For it seemed at first soft and sweet, a mere rippling of gentle sounds in delicate melodies, but it could not be quenched, and it took to itself power and profundity, and it seemed at last that there were two musics progressing at one time before the seat of Iluvatar, and they were utterly at variance. The one was deep and wide and beautiful, but slow, and blended with an immeasurable sorrow, from which its beauty chiefly came. The other had now achieved a unity of its own, but it was loud and vain and endlessly repeated, and it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison as of many trumpets braying upon a few notes. And it essayed to drown the other music by the violence of its voice, but it seemed that its most triumphant notes were taken by the other and woven into its own solemn pattern. In the midst of this strife, whereat the halls of Iluvatar shook, and a tremor ran out into the silences yet unmoved, Iluvatar arose a third time, and his face was terrible to behold. Then he raised up both his hands, and in one chord, deeper than the abyss, higher than the firmament, piercing as the light of the eye of Iluvatar, the music ceased.
Now that's just a brief section, and I recommend you go and read it through entirely on your own to enjoy its beauty, not just in part. So you could see how music plays a massive part in the background to all of Tolkien's stories and the creation of the world in his mythology. Now, turning away from Tolkien's secondary world, let's look at the reality from our primary world of how music or sound frequencies affect the very elements of creation in our world. This is how the Rings of Power intro sequence so brilliantly connects to Tolkien's creation myth of music. And so you could see the showrunners put a lot of clever thought into the beginning sequence of the show to artfully portray the myth of beginnings in Tolkien's secondary world. We have a simple yet beautiful portrayal of Tolkien's creation myth, the Ainulindalë, of how the one god, Eru, sang all of creation into being through music and sound, and how Melkor began to corrupt creation with his own themes of discordant sound. Really amazing. And I also can't help but assume that Tolkien was thinking of a passage from the book of Job, which is the very book Tolkien was once translating for the Jerusalem Bible, which was published in 1966. In that verse in the book of Job, "Who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the divine beings shouted for joy? So you can see the amazing similarity between Tolkien's creation myth and that short passage from the book of Job about the angels, the divine beings, sometimes known as the sons of God, singing together at the creation of the world and shouting for joy. But there's even more than just the mythology of the music in the intro sequence. There is more meaning packed in there for the watchful eye of Tolkien fans. So let's take a quick look at the intro credit sequence while I give some commentary. So here's the intro sequence. We see the sand already beginning to move and taking shape because of the sound frequencies of what we're assuming is the music of the Valar and the music of Eru. And look, already we see rings, right? Rings of power. And if we count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rings with the big one in the middle. Interesting. Taking shape again. That looks like a tree. These remind me of the white tree, which we know so well from all of the stories, even into the Lord of the Rings. But there's 2 trees, and they're a little different from each other, so that also makes us think of the 2 trees of Valinor. Some more interesting shapes. By the way, I think I know what most of these shapes are, but perhaps we'll leave them for you to all enjoy and figure out. I don't want to spoil it. But one more thing I do want to reveal, which is really amazing, and you just miss it if you're not watching or pausing like I am. But watch what happens here. This is so cool. What's forming there? What's that? What's that? Wait a second. What is that shape? That's a very familiar shape for Tolkien fans, especially of the Second Age. It passes really quickly. Did you see that? Watch it again. Let's pause it again. Right there. That looks like something a Númenórean would be familiar with, let's say. And then it turns into something. That makes me think of waves. Maybe it's not, but I see a map of Númenor and then waves. Interesting. There's a lot more in this intro, but like I said, I think we should leave it for everybody to interpret on their own. There's some really amazing stuff in here. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Get out of here, Melkor. Thanks for listening to my take on the intro sequence of The Rings of Power. I think the showrunners hit a home run with their interpretation of a difficult theme to portray visually. If you appreciate the content or music of this channel, please consider supporting my crowdfund campaign for the new Lonely Mountain Band album. The link is in the description, or just go to lonelymountain.band. Direct link to the crowdfund is lonelymountain.band. And again, let us not judge a matter before it's seen or heard. Fair travels, friends.